Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today in the 24th episode I am joined by Twan.
Hello.
Twan and I will be discussing the X²O Badkamers Trofee in Antwerpen that took place today. But before we dive into that, there is something that I need to set clear here. Eventually we didn't record a preview podcast for the Superprestige in Gavere because we thought we couldn't really add anything because there were so many new people joining the field here this weekend. Van der Poel, Merlier, Vermeersch, Richards, and their performances are just too important for us to be able to tell you guys more before Gavere than that we could before Antwerpen. So that's why in this podcast we'll be also taking a look ahead at the Superprestige in Gavere. Well, with that said, we raced in Antwerpen today, which had a completely redesigned parcours. What did you think about it, Twan?
I think it's an okay parcours in its own right. I really like the old one, which makes me feel a bit of the same way like Toon Aerts did before the start of the race. He said it didn't really like it, and especially in the preview, it looked very narrow, so I really agreed with him. But having seen the race, it's alright. It's certainly something different. I like the previous one more focused on the sand sections, especially with now the second section, last section mostly being run. It's really unfortunate, I think, for the parcours.
However, I did also like this parcours. And yes, the older one was probably better because it had this sand section that was deciding, but this was a better parcours than that I thought looking at the map and at the onboard first. I like that the balance, it was pretty balanced, some straight, some tarmac, a lot of grass, still a lot of sand. Maybe the second sand section was a bit too long because most of the time they needed to run almost 300 meters. That's the only thing that I would change, maybe put them down closer towards the water in the beginning and then let them come up so the running section is a bit shorter. But overall, I think this parcours definitely passes the check, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it definitely has a place on the calendar, but I just think after what we have had over the last years, it's a bit disappointing coming to this one.
Well, then let's dive straight into the racing. The men's race, it was of Mathieu van der Poel making his return to the field, and he didn't waste any time. He went into the first corner first, but it was Van der Haar who came out of that corner first. Van der Poel waited for one lap, then he smashed his pedals and he basically dropped everyone and he opened a gap, and it looked to be back to normal business here in cyclocross, Van der Poel dominating. But eventually Van der Poel made a mistake in the sand section, causing him to crash, meaning his gap, it almost was halved. Eventually Iserbyt caught up, and even later a few others caught up, like Van Toerenhout, Zweek, and I think Hermans was there as well. But ultimately it were Iserbyt and Van der Poel who rode away from that group, and after that, basically Iserbyt was just following the wheel of Van der Poel for the time being. Van der Poel put on the pressure up in the last two laps and eventually managed to ride up the steep hill which Iserbyt needed to walk, and Van der Poel opened the gap and went on to win his first race here in Antwerpen. So this Van der Poel-Iserbyt battle, you could call it a battle even though it was mostly Van der Poel who was pushing them down. What were your observations about this battle, Twan?
It never really felt like a battle. Of course, like after the first acceleration, it really looked like, for myself, I was thinking, well, this is just like everyone has just given up already. This is done, and this is what we're going to see over the next 2 months. Van der Poel maybe taking it easy on the first lap, but then he's gone. They were able to come back though, which was really surprising to me. It seemed like Van der Poel was lacking a little bit of rhythm maybe, and it never really felt like he would give it away though. It always felt like he was still in control, especially as you said on that second to last lap where Iserbyt had to walk up the hill. I just felt like he can't lose this anymore, because next time he is going to get up there again, and Iserbyt will probably make the same mistake, or will probably still not get up there, and we'll see him win because it is so close to the finish line. So I think it was still a very impressive performance from Van der Poel, but I think there's still a lot of improvement to be made.
I agree. You could see at these small things that Van der Poel wasn't in a rhythm. Such a mistake in the sand, he wouldn't make that if he had ridden a few races more. But I think it does give some perspective. I think the level in the cyclocross has gone up. Maybe not as much as we thought. Van der Poel still wins at his return, but it definitely wasn't as easy as he has had it at his return. Of course, last year in Civel, it wasn't the easiest race either, but that was on a completely different parcours. So I think overall Van der Poel can be happy, but Iserbyt has some perspective as well.
Yeah, I think Iserbyt has come a little closer, but the gap is still significant enough to the point where I think Van der Poel can be quite confident in his chances.
Talking about Iserbyt, something that came to notice during the race was when Van der Poel was caught by Iserbyt, at some point Van Toornout took the lead and they went into a pretty narrow section. You had the sand section, you had the hill. If they wanted to win, and I'm pretty sure Van Toornout would have done it if he was in Iserbyt's place, Iserbyt should have gotten off the bike on that hill, forced Van der Poel to run, and Van Toornout would have opened a 10-second gap. Meaning, Van Toornout in the end did fall back. He finished, where did he end? 8th on, what was it? 1 minute and 8 seconds down. But, still, if he opens that gap, you can have a completely different race. And let's say Van Toornout would have been caught, but Van der Poel would have needed to done that work. So maybe that could have been the difference for Iserbyt. Why didn't Iserbyt let that gap fall there?
I think that's the part where, I don't know, it seems like a bit of ego that just gets in the way of actual team race tactics. Because, like you said, it would be a very decent tactic. The argument that he has going for him is the fact that Van Toornout ended up finishing more than a minute back. But still, it's a little bit of extra effort that Van der Poel would have to make. You would force him out of his rhythm, and I think especially on his first race, that is something that is very important to him. So I think it could have done a lot for Iserbyt, but he just wouldn't do such a thing. And I think we have seen this over the past weeks and months with Toon Aerts as well.
I think what adds to that is that Iserbyt looked to be really eager to show himself here. You could see in the first lap he didn't have the best start. He made ridiculous moves, in my opinion, especially the one on Hermans with his elbow/head. That was over a line, in my opinion, unnecessary as well. Some dive bombs at strange places. You could feel that he really wanted to show to the others, and probably for his own ego, which every cyclist has. He wanted to show, look guys, I'm the next thing in cyclocross. I can compete with Van der Poel, I can compete with the world champion, instead of having all this talk at the Belgian bakeries that, yeah, you win, but Van der Poel isn't here. So I think that added to that as well. He was way too eager here to want to perform against Van der Poel.
Yeah, I think that move on Hermans, to go a little more into that, I just hope someone like Hermans, who gets that move made on him, widens himself out, puts that elbow out, puts it back into Iserbyt, get Iserbyt on the ground, and he will never do it again, because he's the guy in the wrong there, because you shouldn't be doing that right there. Like, it's all well and good that you want to take that corner, but don't start putting your shoulders and your head into another person in like the preparation of a corner. It's just something that I think is that, yeah, it's definitely over the line, and it's not so much over the line that you would DQ someone over it, but you don't want to see that happen too often.
I definitely agree, and maybe to calm things down a bit there, I think it's more a case of if Hermans puts his elbow out there, Iserbyt goes down and potentially Hermans as well, then rather than Hermans puts his elbow down just so Iserbyt crashes. Bit of a nuance there that, of course, I don't want to see people crash there, but I understand what you're saying. That could easily end in a crash there.
Yeah, I think that nuance is fair enough to be made. I think Hermans should be trying more to defend his position, is basically what I'm getting at. Of course, there has to be no crash involved, but...
In third place, for a bit of a change, we find someone who isn't from Belgium or the Netherlands. It's Tom Pitcock, who rode a pretty good race. For most of the race, he was in 7th or 8th place, looking to be struggling slightly, just like last week. But in the end, he rides a very good recovery and ends 3rd here. What can you make out of that performance?
These are the performances we're more used to seeing from him, having a decent but not too great start, and just slowly moving his way up through the field and managing to get onto that 3rd place, battling it out with the likes of Toon Aerts there. I'm really happy to see him back up here. I think this is where he belongs in that battle for the podium places, and I think we'll see him making a few steps, and he might even challenge for some victories this year. He'll probably, actually.
I think he will as well. This looked pretty promising, and I mean, he really paced himself well. It looked to be some other guys that we'll come to maybe a bit later to discuss them a bit more, but people like Van Toornout and Hermans, they blew themselves up, whereas Pitcock, Aerts and Van der Haar, they paced themselves better and in the end overtook these riders from Paul Sauze.
And Cameron Mason earlier this week on the podcast said that Tom Pitcock will be improving over time, and we see that this week. So let's see what he can do even more.
I already mentioned some other names, but let's take a look at the entire top 10. We had the world champion as winner Mathieu van der Poel in front of European champion Elie Iserbyt and British champion Tom Pitcock. In 4th place we find Toon Aerts in front of teammate Lars van der Haar. Then we see Laurens Sveek in 6th. Not the best race for him. Hermans 7th, Van Toornout 8th, Van Kessel 9th, and Daan Soete rounds off the top 10. To get some names out here, we see Toon Aerts ending 4th here today. During the race, at least I got the feeling he was more busy with the race tomorrow in the Superprestige than with today's race. Waiting for Van der Haar a few times to try and get him in his wheel, eventually dropping Van der Haar with the good pacing ending in 4th. Do you think Aerts maybe is one that we should really keep an eye on out tomorrow rather than look at his result today?
Yeah, I think for today he missed the start a little, and for the first lap and a bit, I kind of got the idea from him that he wasn't trying all too hard, and then like he had the realization that he still had a classification to fight for here, even if it wasn't going to be for the overall win in the classification. And then he seemed to recover, and then he started moving up, and he ends up on a nice 4th place. But I think tomorrow is the more interesting race for him.
Also, the parcours tomorrow should be better for him, but we'll come to that just after we discuss Quinten Hermans. Quinten Hermans in 7th. I think he rode a pretty good cross today. Long time in the mix for the podium. Eventually he loses it, but 7th. Still not bad. You can see more and more the improvement at Hermans.
Yeah, I think at the start of the season he blew up quite a few times, and it was just really annoying to see him at the start at the front, because you just knew he would fall back and quite far as well. But I think he is really improved over the past few weeks, and whilst he still had to let go of Iserbyt, you really saw that he was able to fight with the other guys for positions, and I think this is a really good result for him here as well.
Then a last name in the top 10 I would like to talk about is Sveek. He ended in 6th, 1 place in front of Hermans. But I expected more from Sveek personally, especially with these stand sections. He became Belgian champion here last year. He loves the stand. He put up a fight in Koksijde Belgian Championships against Van Aert. 6th today, I expected more of him.
Yeah, I think for him it's a really big disadvantage how they moved around the sand sections on the course. They just aren't as important as they used to be, because they are either like pretty easily rideable, or they're like near impossible to ride. So there is not really an advantage to be had here, and I think you really see that in this result. It's good, but it's not great.
Yeah, that's fair enough what you say about the sand, because indeed the sand sections are either pretty easy to ride or running, but it did benefit some other riders. Maybe someone like Nieuwenhuis here ending 11th today. It's already a lot better than last week. 11th place in a pretty strong field here in front of someone like Ryan Kamp. Improvement here for Nieuwenhuis. He can go towards the top 10, you think?
I think that is definitely something that he should be aiming for, and we will hopefully see that quite a few times this season. With everyone coming back, the top 10 is looking better and better, and I think at this point you can be quite proud of top 10 as well, whereas in past weeks you would mostly be fighting for like top 5, top 7 to be really happy with your result.
Then two other riders who also came back here were Merlier and Vermeersch. What do you make of their comeback?
I think this was the same that we saw with Pitcock, the same that we saw with Nieuwenhuis. Just a bit of a slow start, but they're pretty much going to get there. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Are they racing tomorrow?
Yes, they are. And personally, I think tomorrow might be still a bit too early, but maybe in 1 or 2 weeks' time, with the Christmas period coming up, that's when we can really see where they stand.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking as well. Tomorrow might still be a little early. They might do a little better. But especially indeed around the Christmas break in a week, in 2 weeks' time, we will really see them get back to their old level, which is fighting for those top 10 places and sometimes even top 5s.
Well, that makes it perfect to cross over into talking about what we think will happen in the men's race tomorrow. Not as extensive as we usually do in the preview podcast, but just a short talk about the parcours. It's in Gavere, it's a super hard parcours, lots of climbing, quite some potential for mud. We don't know what the current situation at the parcours is, but we can hope for some mud. Start list, all the big names except Van Aert are there. Do we think that Van der Poel will be able to win there, or do we think that this is a parcours that suits Iserbyt better and that Iserbyt can put a serious fight up tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we have to take Twan Aerts into consideration there as well. He will also be looking to put in a great performance tomorrow. Tom Pitcock on his day on that kind of parcours. I think tomorrow is going to be a great race to watch, and Van der Poel will, I think, struggle to take victory.
Do you also think that Van der Poel might have a slightly cautious start to the race, that he's thought today, maybe I went a bit too early, so tomorrow he waits till somewhere like half race if he has the opportunity to drop the others?
The thing with Van der Poel is, what I usually find is that he isn't as comfortable riding in a group anymore because he rides out front so much. So I'm not sure if he should be waiting. It would probably be the better option to see what he can do, but I think he gets quite uncomfortable in those situations. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow.
Fingers crossed that it is an interesting race tomorrow indeed. Then, of course, the women's race was there as well. They were the first one to race on this new parcours. What happened in that race, Twan?
It was Brandt who took a very strong start, and after the first lap we crossed the finish line and people were able to come back to her. She had a little bit of a gap, but Overrade was able to close it, followed by Betsema and Worst as well. Kastelein was in there briefly as well, but she ended up blowing herself up. And unfortunately, it was Alvarado who had a mechanical, and that absolutely killed her chances because I think she had to run more than half the lap, and she stood there trying to fix her bike for over 15 seconds. So she was totally out of it. And then Betsema accelerated, trying to put the others under pressure, and that completely worked. It was Brandt and Worst who were chasing. Eventually, Brandt would drop Worst, and Brandt in the last lap really threatened to return to Betsema, but it was too little, too late. Betsema would come home victorious. Brandt in second and third for Annemarie Worst.
I personally think Betsema was really the strongest here today. She didn't have the best of starts here once again, but it looks to be on the days that she messes up her start, she is the strongest. And this time she finishes off the recovery with the win, and especially in the sand sections, she really was better than the rest.
Yeah, it looked like a very strong performance from Betsema, and I think she can take a lot of confidence out of this toward the rest of the season, especially when we meet this type of parcours again, of course, at the World Championships.
I will have to agree with you on that one. The World Championships, Denise Betsema seriously putting herself down as a contender on that type of parcours, but she will need to take it up against Brandt, who in my opinion is the most complete and probably the best cyclocross rider in the women's scene at the moment.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. On a normal day, of course, you put Alvarado in there as well. And I think where it was a disadvantage, the new sand sections for Laura Sweek, it was kind of an advantage for Annelie Worst. She was able to stick with the others quite a bit longer than we were used to from the last few weeks, and she was getting through the sand sections okay. In the running parts, she definitely lost a few meters, but that was about it.
Yeah, that's true. She ends third here. Finally, a good result for her. I don't remember when her last podium was, but it should have been quite some time ago because she had quite some bad luck. I think her last podium was at the European Championships in Rosmalen, and that's already more than a month ago that she had her last podium. So that's good for her. I do think that Alvarado would have ended in front of Worst if she didn't get the iron stuck in her back wheel, but you have to be there if your opponents don't finish the race.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would put Alvarado near Brandt and Betsema. Of course, we're not sure where she would finish, but I think this is the kind of fortune that Worst just needs, like a little bit of more misfortune for others instead of herself, in order to regain that confidence and start battling for podiums and victories again.
But for Worst, things did look better than a couple of weeks ago. I mean, she looked a bit stronger here, a bit more power, being able to ride up the hills where others couldn't. I think Worst is definitely improving her form.
Yeah, I think this is promising, and I hope she can continue this line into the Christmas period, because there's definitely some crosses there that will suit her.
Let's then take a look at the entire top 10 without world champion Alvarado, who ended 24th or something in the end. It was Denise Betsema who took the win in front of Lucinda Brandt and Annemarie Worst. Fourth place went to Belgian champion Sanne Kant in front of Manon Bakker and Anna Kay. The riders who round off the top 10 are Jara Kastelein, Fem van Empel, Laura Verdonschot and Aniek van Alphen. So a few names that stand out here in this top 10 to me is Anna Kay, 6th place here. Once again, another step. She really looks to be gaining confidence and gaining endurance during this season.
I think at the start of the season, she was not doing that well, and she's slowly been coming back into it with everyone here. And today she met a parcours that suits her quite well, and she was able to take advantage.
I definitely think Kay is somebody who can move towards that top 5 a bit later on the parcours that suit her the best, and today was probably one that suited her. But she ended in front of Jara Kastelein, who started this race in Antwerp as the leader of the X²O Badkamer Trofee. And now she finishes 7th. I think in the beginning you could really see that she was trying to stay at the front for the classification, but eventually that resulted in her blowing up.
Yeah, I think it was very unfortunate. On the hill sections, you really saw that she wasn't able to make up it, but she kept on trying, and the dismounting wasn't ideal, and that's kind of a euphemism for what happened there sometimes. You really saw it wasn't going to go all that great unless she found a way to fix that, and she had to compensate by sprinting back every time to the wheel that she wanted to be on, and eventually it just became too much, and unfortunately she dropped back quite a bit.
Then some other names that I would like to put up is Catablanca Vash, ending 14th here. She was stuck behind a crash in the first corner of Alicia Frank, her teammate. So not the best day for her, but I'm sure she will bounce back from this. Some other names I would like to go into a bit more is a bit further down. You see in places 16, 17 and 18. 3 interesting names: Compton, Honsinger and Richards. What do we think out of these 3 names?
I think for Katie Compton, it's very nice to see her taking steps towards the top 10. Of course, had a bit of a slow start here, but this looks really promising. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think you're right. Compton, not the best start. Well, that's a complete understatement. A terrible start, actually. 27, 31, 29. But probably things are getting better now. 16th here. I think she can move forward from that. And if I was Honsinger and Richards, I would be more disappointed. Both 23 years old. And I think they both could have ended in a better place than 17th and 18th here.
Yeah, I think Honsinger affected by the crash in the first lap as well. But that's not really something that would resolve her from this whole performance. I don't think it was too great. A bit of an off day, it seems like. and I think she should be hoping for better things tomorrow if she's on the start list. Which is something, unfortunately, we can't say for Evie Richards. She won't be there tomorrow, and I think that is a missed chance. Parcours that would suit her way better than it did today. So it wasn't too surprising to see her back quite a bit. I had hoped for more personally, but of course this is perfectly acceptable. Just a bit disappointing that she isn't starting tomorrow.
I had more hopes for Honsinger today, so basically the same what you had for Richards. But tomorrow Honsinger is racing. She is racing the Superprestige in Gavere, and that parcours comes decently close to the parcours in Namur, where she ended 6th last year in the World Cup. Her first race in Europe that was last season. I think tomorrow is definitely... Probably, I already said this for Antwerpen, I thought Honsinger could challenge for top 5, but I'll say it once again for tomorrow, Honsinger can challenge for a top 5, but I think for the win we'll be looking at Alvarado against Brandt and potentially Vorst and Kastelein.
I think Betsema has to be put in that conversation as well, especially after what she showed today. Of course, was also very good on the climbing course of Beringen.
Yes, indeed. I just didn't see her at the start list because she has number 14 because of her lower placement on the UCI rankings. But basically, it's the 5 standard Dutch names that you can expect up there tomorrow in the cross.
Yeah, although I think this season Kastelein has kind of removed her from that like standard 5th place or in the battle therefore. I do agree though that she is one to watch out for tomorrow. Especially if it is a dry course, then Jaga Kastelein will probably find a parcours to her liking.
And she definitely likes these climbing courses, but for the women's race, I mean, it's just no way that we can know who is the one that's going to be there. But basically, judging by what we said earlier this podcast, I think Brandt and Alvarado should be the clear favorites here, and they should be followed closely by Vorst and then Betsema. And behind that, there's a bunch of riders like Vash, Honsinger, Kastelein, who could potentially challenge if they have a great day.
Yeah, I think these are definitely some names that at least one of them should be in the first group for quite a bit, but will probably drop out and battle for that 5th place.
Should add Petersen to that list as well, but I mean, there's nothing really that we can say clearly here because it's just such an open race always, and today you could see that for a pretty long time, quite a lot of riders stayed within 30 seconds of the leader, and tomorrow that will be different for sure. With this podcast almost coming to an end, I'm just going to give you the results of some other cyclocross races. Today there was also a Toy Cup in Kolin. This was a C2 race. It was won by the Polish rider Marek Konwa in front of Adam Tupajlik. And in 3rd place we find Belgian Ingmar Uitenwilligen. The women's race there was won by Pavla Havlikova in front of Karla Stepanova and Terza Vanisikova, all 3 from the Czech Republic. But there was also racing in a more sunny place in Spain, where it was Felipe Orts who took the win. No surprise there in front of his fellow Spaniard Kevin Suarez Fernandez. Also no surprise, these two usually finish 1st and 2nd in the Spanish races. In 3rd place there was David Menu, the French rider. In the women's race there in Spain, also no surprises. It was won by Lucia González Blanco, who usually wins these races, but she was looked to be challenged here by a young French rider, Lauriane Dufabourg from France, and the 3rd place went to Aida Nuna Palacio. With that said, we had all the cyclocross for today, but don't worry, tomorrow we'll be back when we'll be discussing the Superprestige in Gavere. Then Issam will be able to join us. So today, thank you Twan for joining.
Thank you for having me on.
If you are wondering where you can watch the Superprestige of Gavere, make sure to check cyclocross.social.com, and then I wish you guys the best of days. See you. Goodbye.